1912, the Titanic sinks. On board, John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus. All wealthy, all opposed to the creation of a central bank. J.P. Morgan owned the ship. He canceled last minute. They didn't. The resistance sank. The system rose. If you truly want to understand the true value of silver, you first have to understand the true value of a dollar. And that is exactly what this video is going to do in an extremely telling and shocking manner. First though, make sure you subscribe. I post daily videos. Share this video with someone close to you, maybe a friend that doesn't understand why you're stacking, or someone who thinks that maybe we are a little off the rails, or that maybe we're just a little too paranoid or on the fence about stacking, or is a little too comfortable with all of their assets in the stock market or something pegged to the fiat-based system, because this is going to break down the birth of the Federal Reserve, history's most brazen power grab hidden in plain sight. I will link this article in the description, and with that said, let's talk about it. The private banking cartel that conquered America in 1913 and quietly engineered a century of debt, war, and decline while politicians looked the other way. The Rothschilds Warning on financial power remains relevant. A historical quote attributed to Mayor Rothschild is gaining renewed attention. And I quote, "The few who understand the system will either be so interested in its profits or so dependent on its favors that there will be no opposition from that class." This perspective highlights how the architecture of modern finance enables those with insider knowledge to benefit directly from its profits or become reliant on the advantages it grants. This creates a group whose interests are tied to maintaining and defending the established financial order. As a result, meaningful opposition to the system rarely comes from within, even if the broader population experiences disadvantages or inequities. The enduring structure of high finance thus not only concentrates wealth and privilege, but also preserves itself by minimizing dissent from those closest to its core. Now, this is important because as the US dollar being the world reserve currency, we are reliant on everyone else to believe in the dollar. But since the dollar isn't backed by anything, it's only as strong as people think it is. So if people start to think the dollar's not strong, like we're seeing with Russia and all these other countries, then the dollar's not strong. That's a very dangerous game plan to have. As soon as we got rid of the gold standard, in 1971, we were basically throwing or we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I'll put it that way. Now you're also going to see, I'll show this graph real quick. This is the purchasing power of the dollar, 1913 to 2019. So 1913, Federal Reserve is created. 1933, FDR's executive order makes it illegal to hold gold coin, bullion, or certificates. Then Bretton Woods established the USD as the world reserve currency. Then 1971, Nixon closes the gold window, end of Bretton Woods, beginning of the modern day fiat currency system. Now this is a real chart with real percentages. When I say the dollar's lost 98% of its purchasing power, I'm being literal, folks. Show this video to someone who maybe doesn't understand the reality that we're living in, or some people don't even want to know this, honestly. They would rather just close their eyes and cover their ears because the truth is too much for them to handle. And honestly, I get it. The more you know, the harder it is to just not pretend to get by, but to get by without feeling a lot of frustration. And that is why a lot of us stackers are preppers, or we are very active in the community, or maybe make our own channels, or whatever the case is. But anyways, let's keep moving on. I'm going to try not to veer off and ramble on my own. I really want to cover this article because it itself is substance enough. So this perspective highlights how architecture of modern finance enables those with insider knowledge. And not only enabling those with insider knowledge, but it's directly hurting those who don't have insider knowledge, and makes those that are on the outside watching from the bleachers slaves to the system. We are getting ourselves out of debt by replacing it with more debt. That is like trying to pay off a credit card with another credit card, and it has caught up. Now, right now, silver sitting at 37.03. Now, I want you to hold a 1 ounce coin in your left hand and then take $37 and hold that in your right hand. And tell me which seems more valuable. I actually used to do this with a $20 bill because silver was $20 when I used to use this comparison. It's just crazy that silver's almost doubled since I made that video. And the thumbnail was actually an American eagle and a $20 bill in the thumbnail, and in the video I'm comparing the two. It's so crazy that silver's doubled since I made that video back in the day. That just kind of goes to show that if you're a newer stacker, you might be desensitized to higher prices, but the average price of silver since I've been stacking is around $15. $15 is about the average price since I've been stacking for like 11 years now. So you might think $37 is low, which it is, but in the grand scheme of things, it has gone up substantially over the years that I've been watching. You just are newer, so you don't know that, or you just don't have the same type of perspective because you didn't live it. You could look at it from a chart and see that what it used to be, but it's not the same as actually paying those prices over the years and seeing it live and seeing the rallies. But anyways, this is usdebtclock.org, the national debt being $37,181,644,000,000. Debt per citizen, $108,000. That is insane. So this creates a group, right? And they're talking about this group reliant on the system. The ones that are in debt that are slaves to the system, even more so. This creates a group whose interests are tied to maintaining and defending the established financial order, and as a result, meaningful opposition to the system rarely comes from within, even if the broader population experiences disadvantages or inequities. The enduring structure of high finance thus not only concentrates wealth and privilege, but also preserves itself by minimizing dissent from those closest to its core. Economist Richard Werner appeared on Tucker Carlson's show to discuss the origins of central banking. During this conversation, Werner exposed how the foundation of central banking involved influential families from both Germany and the USA, specifically the Warburg brothers. One brother, Paul Warburg, was instrumental in establishing the Federal Reserve in the US, while his sibling Max Warburg was a significant figure in German banking. Werner argued that even during World War I, when the two nations were enemies, the brothers' actions and shared interests suggest a secretive collusion that influenced international banking systems and policy outcomes, exposing connections rarely discussed publicly. Here's part of that segment.
The central bank of the United States, the Fed, was created right before the war. What was the role of the central banks during that war?
From 1917, the US and Germany were at war, and their economies organized as war economies. At the pinnacle of the war economies are the central banks. So who were the key players in the German central bank, the Reichsbank, which was 100% privately owned? There was somebody called Max Warburg, or Max Warburg, you might say in English, and who was at the pinnacle, in fact, was a founder of the Federal Reserve, and who was the key person there, Paul Warburg. his brother. But of course, the soldiers have to kill each other, and these two countries are at war.
Wait. The head of the German central bank and the head of the American central bank were run by brothers during a war between the U.S. and Germany?
Yes.
Okay. So the Federal Reserve, history's most brazen power grab hidden in plain sight. Ask yourself, why has every major reform in modern America, from finance to war to education, somehow ended with you more dependent and the elites more powerful? Why, on the edge of every new crisis, does it seem the only constants are mounting national debt and the omnipresent hand of the Federal Reserve? Let's rip away the mask from the so-called central bank, the single most audacious and poorly understood mechanism of power ever imposed on a democratic nation. Is it any surprise that the Federal Reserve itself was born from secrecy, deception, and collusion? In 1912, as the Titanic slipped beneath the freezing Atlantic, some of America's most prominent opponents to a central banking cartel, Astor, Guggenheim, Strauss, vanished forever. And then this goes into what I shared in the introduction of this video. Now, I've heard of Titanic conspiracy theories. I've heard of all the billionaires that were on board, but I didn't know how much it had to do with the financial system. Or, I remember hearing that JP Morgan canceled last minute, but I didn't know how relevant it was. JP Morgan, whose banking empire most stood to profit from such a system, conveniently canceled his journey at the last minute. Coincidence or coup? Ask yourself, who benefited as resistance was silenced and the system rose from the wreckage? Now, by December 23rd, 1913, while most of Congress headed home from Christmas, or for Christmas, the creature from Jekyll Island was birthed. Not by any populist demand, but by a cabal of Wall Street and European financiers led by Paul Warburg. Why was this German Jewish Rothschild proxy an outsider invited to design America's money system? Why did no press cover the clandestine meeting on Jekyll Island where Warburg, Aldrich, Morgan, and their ilk crafted the plan to privately control public currency? What did they fear you would know? Think about this. The new Federal Reserve is neither federal nor does it possess reserves. It's a private banking syndicate with power to issue and lend fiat dollars at will, then collect the principal and interest from the labor of everyday Americans. They print and inflate. You work and repay. Your prosperity is their asset. Your struggle, their interest due. Can anything be more flagrantly backwards, more contemptibly exploitive? But the tentacles didn't stop at money. Ask yourself why the same year America lost her mandatory sovereignty, she also birthed the IRS, the machinery to extract taxes from your very sweat. Why did the men who engineered new currency, which cost them nothing to print, immediately demand a claim on your paycheck? What is income tax but legalized tribute binding you forever to a debt racket you never elected? If funding government was the goal, why must citizens bleed while banks collect compounded interest year on year? Why has nearly every philanthropic foundation founded in 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation, the American Cancer Society, and the ADL served mainly to warp medicine, silence speech, and secured new forms of dependency? Can you really not see the pattern? These gifts funded not the public good, but ever tighter control over education, science, and even your basic biology. Has industrialized medicine cured disease or just manufactured new lines of profit? Has the ADL defended civil rights or policed dissent to insulate the very architects of your enslavement? What followed was catastrophe dressed as progress. 1 year later, World War I, funded on banker credit and industrial charnel, housed the enriching likes of Morgan, Rothschild, and Warburg. With every war after, the playbook grew clearer. Problem, reaction, profit. Whose profits from funding both sides, then collecting on the ashes? How much blood must be spilled before we see the Fed profits from chaos far more than from peace? Now, folks, this is heavy stuff, and I'm sure you know a lot of this, but the only light at the end of this very corrupt tunnel is that at least we know the alternative. At least we know that precious metals can protect ourselves from this system. Most people don't know that, and that's why I work so hard every day, and that's why I've been doing what I do for as long as I do it, is because my whole point is to allow people to at least have the opportunity, the option. You could do what you want. If you don't want to go buy silver from Miles Franklin, send an email to info@milesfranklin.com, let them know Slayer sent you. If you don't want to do that, you don't, at least if you see my channel, you now have the option. Most people don't even know that they can protect their wealth. Most people don't even know that any of this is going on, that the dollar's not strong, that America's 37 trillion. Most people don't know that. So if you at least see my video, you have a choice. What you do with that choice is up to you, but at least you have a choice and you know the truth. And that's my purpose of this channel. It's not to convince you to buy silver, it's to let you know that you have an option to and why that option is so important. Now, stop and look around. The dollar is a pale ghost, worth less than 1% of its 1913 value. A century's wages stolen with a printing press. The middle class, once the engine of democracy, is strangled by inflation, debt, and taxation. Endless wars, economic booms and busts, a national debt measured not in billions but in trillions. At every hinge of history, the Fed stands unchanged, unaccountable, and unchallenged. Why do we permit it? Why do we permit it? Why does every president, every senator, every major party play along, save Ron Paul, whose lone calls to end the Fed are met with laughter, ridicule, or silence? Are we so enthralled by the circus of politics, so divided by bread and circus media that we ignore the one true root of nearly every American ill? Look at the record. Since 1913, every American crisis is engineered atop a banking edifice built on fraud and designed for dominance. The schools, funded by foundations, writing the narrative. The media, owned by the same interests, selling the illusion of debate. The politicians, funded and blackmailed by every cartel they pretend to regulate. So I ask again, when will we admit what happened in 1913 was not progress but occupation? When will we tear away the illusion that the Fed is some neutral guardian of stability rather than the keystone of parasitic, unaccountable elite whose entire empire is leveraged on your ignorance? America didn't lose her liberty in battle, but in signatures. The greatest heist in history happened in open daylight, disguised as bureaucracy. If we have any hope reclaiming true freedom, it starts by naming and ending the Federal Reserve for what it is, the beating heart of a system built not to serve you, but to own you forever. This was beautifully written, by the way. Who wrote this? Let me see. Oh, I'm assuming it's John Forrest Little, since he runs the Silver Academy. But I know there are other authors to this Substack, but this was very well written, and it really does hit home, even more so why you should be stacking precious metals, even gold, right? I know my name is Silver Slayer, but gold still does the same. Gold is still a great way to protect your wealth from a financial system that is collapsing. So, yeah, what do you think about this? What do you think? Make sure to send this video to someone who maybe needs to hear this, even if they don't know they do, or someone who doesn't understand why you're stacking, or maybe just send it just to give the video more exposure. I'm doing my part to make these videos, and you could do your part as well by sharing them, liking, commenting, watching till the end. That helps the YouTube algorithm and gets these videos recommended in front of new people. And my whole point is to expose the system, even if it puts me at risk. I'm sticking my neck out online. So is Andy Sheckman, and that's why you should buy from, people like Andy and use and let them know Slayer sent you, so I get the commission, because we're the ones putting our lives on the line, putting our reputation on the line Don't just buy from some big corporation that aren't doing anything. Give back. I really do appreciate it. And plus our prices are just as good, if not better. And a lot of times our inventory is even bigger. So anyways, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Go subscribe to Salivate Metal as well. I'll link his channel in the description of the pinned comment. Let's get him to 100K. He was the first one to do this. If you want to talk about someone to give back to, Sal is the guy. He was the first silver stacking channel to hit YouTube to expose this type of stuff. So, go help him out. Let's get him to 100K. Anyways, I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.